everyone. It's 1:17 p.m. and at this time we'll call the meeting of the Conservation Authority Board of Directors to order for May 27th, 2026. It's 1:17. First, I'd like to acknowledge that with respect to history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires, known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial, and further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as their traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples. And before I go to item 2, disclosure of pecuniary interest, I should just note that we have quorum inside the chambers here today, but we are also joined with board member Dubik online virtually at this time as well. So we're looking forward to our last meeting at the chambers here, and more so to our next meeting being at the refurbished administration center. Item 2 is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Are there any interests to be disclosed at this time? Not seeing any, nor online. Item 3, call for additional agenda items. Not seeing any. Item 4 is adoption of the agenda. Do I have a mover to adopt the agenda? Member Farmer so moved, seconded by Member Winters. Any comments, questions, discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? That's carried. Item 5 is approval of the minutes of the full authority of April 22nd, 2026. Do I have a motion to approve? Member Urick, seconded by Member Maxwell. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We have no business out of the minutes at this time. Item 7 is the consent agenda. Are there any items within the consent agenda members would wish to speak to or remove separately? Not seeing any. So I would entertain a motion to receive the consent agenda. Member Farmer so moved, seconded by Member Urick. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And item 8, this afternoon is a presentation from Sue Bragg of the 2025 audited financial statement. So welcome once again, Sue. The years just keep flying by. Couldn't have been 12 months ago that we saw you. I'll leave it to you to answer and present once again. Welcome.
On now? Oh, there we go. I thought green light meant on, but it's the opposite. Yeah, it's great to see everyone, and I too can't wait to see the newly renovated premises. I think I'm going to have to make a special field trip because I can't wait till next year. Our materials to discuss this afternoon are on, they start on page 26. You can see the first page of the financial report on the screen there in front of you. There's 3 documents altogether. The audited financial statements are on pages 26 to 43. And then the draft schedules that provide more details are on pages 44 to 54. And then our audit findings report on pages 55 to 73. The main focus of my comments this afternoon will be on the audited financial statements themselves, but certainly if you have any questions on any of it, I would be pleased to try and help you. And if the questions, really detailed, nitty-gritty, I know that Allison will be able to help me. So turning to page 29, the first page of the independent auditor's report. There are just a couple of things I'd like to bring to your attention. And the first is, of course, that it's an unqualified audit opinion as it has been in the past. But also, we've added an emphasis of matter paragraph to the audit report this year. And of course, that's related to the future amalgamation of the conservation authorities. Note 14, we've also had some more disclosure included there to explain to the reader, exactly what well, I shouldn't say exactly what, but what the province's plans are for Grey Sauble Conservation Authority. The next page of the audit report, which is page 30 in your agenda package, just to note that these are draft financial statements we're discussing, and hopefully a quorum of the board will approve this afternoon. In which case, the audit report will be dated May 27th, today's date, as you see there. The next page is the statement of financial position, and I just have a couple of comments about those items. So you can see there that both cash for the operating fund and cash from the reserve funds increased quite a bit over last year. As you'll all know, there was a loan received from the City of Owen Sound for $2.1 million, and that was not all spent at December 31st, 2025. These figures are as at December 31st, 2025. I'm sure they look different today, but that's what it is as of the year-end date. The government remittances receivable, typically we've always seen those in a payable position. Last year, you can see under the liabilities that there were 44,000, and this year they're actually in a receivable position of 25,000, and that's because of the large HST rebates that we're expecting as a result of the construction. I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record because I'm going to keep referring to the admin center renewal because lots of the figures in the statements are impacted by that. Under liabilities, you can see accounts payable and accruals are up. Again, that's related to accounts payable and holdbacks related to the admin center project. And then the last item there under liabilities, long-term liabilities, $2,049,000. That's the balance of the $2.1 million loan that we got from the City of Owen Sound. Under non-financial assets, tangible capital assets, you can see there have increased over $1 million compared to last year. There was the routine amortization that we have every year, but obviously significant dollars added for the renewal. And one thing to note that $9 million, it doesn't represent replacement cost or fair market value. It's the original historical cost of the assets owned by Grey Sauble Conservation Authority, amortized over their estimated useful life. So just important to keep that in mind. So total accumulated surplus, $11 million. And some of you may remember last year we had the addition of the accumulated remeasurement gains. There were some changes made by I call them the accounting gods, by the Institute of Chartered Accountants about disclosure and how we present things. And so that accumulated remeasurement gain figure that you see there of 190,000 relates to the investment portfolio. So up above under assets, you see that the investment portfolio is at $1.9 million. That's actually what the fair market value of the portfolio was as at December 31st. The cost base was actually 1.72 million, and they require us the difference between the 1.9 and the 1.7, they require us a sort of a special presentation to show it separately, because of course that increase in fair market value will not be realized until the assets are actually sold. And so in the meantime, they make us show that as on the remeasurement gains and loss schedule. So just to mention that it was brand new last year. So the next page is a statement of operations. And I don't have a lot of comments there. Most of the items are in line with both the budget and last year's figures. We have total revenue of about 4.5 million compared to about 4 million budget and last year. Routinely, we do not budget for the income on the reserve accounts, and that was $143,000 of that difference that you see there, and then a number of other smaller variances. Certainly, the municipal levies, which is the largest figure, is exactly on budget. And similar for the expenses, the budget was 3.8 million compared to 3.9 last year, and the figures came in just under 4.1 million dollars. So we had budgeted an accumulated surplus of about 220,000, and it came in at 485,000. And then let's jump ahead to page 42. I'm not going to belabor the notes too much. For the most part, they are updated from last year, but I always like to talk about the accumulated surplus note, which is note 10. And that is on page 42 of the agenda package, or page 15 is the number at the bottom. It's note 10 at the top. Yeah, that's the one. Um, so this $10.8 million you saw on the statement of financial position as well as on the statement of operations. The invested intangible capital assets, in the past, you've been used to seeing that figure exactly agree to the tangible capital asset figure that's shown on the statement of financial position. But now that we have debt related to the admin center, that figure is actually the $9 million of TCA that you see on the statement of financial position, less the long-term debt related to that. And about 865,000 of that debt from the city had not been used yet. So that's a new line that we've added, 865,000 there as long-term liabilities that have not been used towards TCA yet. Certainly those will all be used up in 2026, but at the end of 2025, they were not. Yeah, and then that also shows, the operating surplus, which gets reconciled in note 12, the balance of the reserve funds as well, which are detailed in note 11. So those were the important aspects of the draft financial statements that I wanted to be sure and highlight for you this afternoon. I'd love to entertain any questions you may have about the audited financial statements, the detailed schedules, or our audit findings report.
Okay, thank you very much, Sue. I may just go online to check with member Dubik first while I'm thinking about her and not seeing her on the screen. Member Dubik, do you have any questions?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And within the room? No, I guess you've done an excellent job in preparing and presenting. It's a good review, and I think we're in a good place. And we certainly know that they're greatly influenced with the work that's going on at the administration center in terms of numbers that are bouncing back and forth in both columns. So it'll settle a little bit more next year that we'll look at. Well, it'll be different. We'll be restructured next year. So as according to one of the notes and disclosures that you made. But thank you very much for the presentation here this afternoon, Sue, and great to see you once again. And certainly we'll welcome you warmly when with a tour whenever it might fit your schedule. That you're over this way to the new admin center. So. Oh, all right. I'll go.
Hit it again. There we go. I'm sort of the talking head that comes and loves to do these presentations, but my senior manager Emily and my manager Zach are the ones that really dig in and do most of the work and bug the bejeebus out of poor Allison and to some extent Tim as well. So a huge thank you to them. We couldn't do it without them. And this is usually the time that I say, I've loved working with you and look forward to many more years. But we'll see what comes with the restructuring. We're certainly here to assist as far as you go, and the province will, I'm sure, let us know what they need in terms of a future audit. So thank you very much.
Member Urick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yeah, we said we wouldn't bring up the amalgamation, and here I am. So it's interesting that they did put in that emphasis of matter paragraph. So as our kind of financial auditor, did they reach out to you on that? Did you reach out to them? I'm just trying to get a grasp on what the province is doing, where the tendrils are going, and where they're reaching out in, because we keep saying, and we keep asking questions that can't be answered. We have zero kind of transparency on where it's going. I don't presume you have much either, but the fact that that's in there, somebody has given some due process thought, I presume.
Well, the due process and thought was strictly by us. As the auditors, we have to consider what's important to bring to the attention of the readers. And so we thought, but just because that was, you know, I'm sure is consuming as much time as the renewal of the admin center, I just thought it was prudent that anyone that looks at your audited financial statement know that in case they've been living under a rock and don't know about it, that we bring that to their attention. So with note 14, as well as the paragraph right in the audited report.
Okay, thanks, Sue. Tim, did you have anything to add there? No, you're good. Okay, so thank you very much once again, Sue. And concluding the presentation as part of the agenda this afternoon, we do have a motion to approve, accept and receive the draft financial report for 2025 as prepared by Baker Tilly, licensed public accountants. So moved by Member Farmer. Do I have a seconder? Member Yurg has moved. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Thanks to staff. Thanks to Sue. So our next item is the 2000 formal report. However, we've passed the resolution. I don't think there's anything further necessary that we speak to there. So item B is the Q1 budget interim report. And am I going to Allison here to present? Welcome, Allison.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, so formerly called the quiet quarter because we don't really have a whole lot to report on at this point. It's too early in the year for any of our major projects other than the admin center to be too far underway. So I guess really all I have to say is things are kind of moving along, just status quo. Our capital part of the budget is, again, with the exception of the admin center, not a whole lot happened in the first quarter, but second quarter, we should be able to report on many items. Guys have been pretty busy. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, it is early in the year. Covered in pretty deep snowfall to get started on most of the capital items, and it's pretty premature to comment too much in the operational, but it is nice to have the capital review in terms of the work plan and that staff are undertaking ahead this year when you provide it like this. Are there any questions for Allison as part of the report? Not seeing any. And we do have a motion as part of this reporting that the Board of Directors receive the staff report 020-2026, the Q1 budget report back as information. Do I have a mover? Member Dubik has so moved, and seconder is Member Winters. Any discussion, questions? Not seeing any. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, Allison. And staying at the podium, I'll pass the light back to you to present the next item.
Okay, yeah, the next item has to do with the COLA change for our 2027 budget, because we are going to be preparing that budget earlier than what we normally do. Currently, our personnel policy states in section 6.5 that we use the CPI from the month of July, which is usually available mid to late August. And we want to be able to come to the board with the budget sooner than that. So we're requesting permission to go ahead and use CPI for the month of April for the initial, and then follow it up by CPI for the month of May once that is available.
Okay, thank you. Member Farmer.
Through the chair, I think this reads as a really sensible plan. I'm happy to move the motion as presented.
Okay, thank you. And the seconder, Member Winters is seconded. Any further questions? It's quite just administrative and timing in nature, so all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Allison. Next item before us is a CA update and the transition committee appointment. So I'll pass it over to Tim at this time to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This seems to me like it's become sort of a standing item on our agenda. Nonetheless, so when we were here in March, I had mentioned to the board that we expected to see legislation associated with the consolidation of the conservation authorities imminently. And it turned out that imminently meant the very next day. So the very next day after the board meeting, we received that. When I was here in April, I noted to the board that Bill 97, the budget bill, had received first and second reading, and we expected third reading and royal assent to follow quickly. So that was Wednesday, April 27th. On Thursday, April 28th, third reading happened. On Friday, April 29th, royal assent was received. So we were just missing you guys by a day with the information, but we have provided that along. Anyway, so Bill 97, which is the budget bill, which contained the substantial changes to the Conservation Authorities Act, received royal assent and became law on Friday, April 29th. And what that means is that the consolidation of the conservation authorities is moving forward as the legislation is in full force and effect now. It's expected that the formal date for this will be February 1st, 2027. So Grace Sauble Conservation Authority will continue as the existing entity that we are until that point in time. Following February 1st, 2027, unless there's a change from the government in the date, we will become part of the Lake Huron Region Conservation Authority, along with Lake Simcoe Region, Nottawasaga Valley, Saugeen Valley, Maitland Valley, and Sauble Bayfield. That is what I would consider to be the formal date, but not the functional date. So at this point, we don't know for sure what the total transition is going to look like, but it's anticipated that functionally operating as one will take several years to transition finance systems, data systems, IT, mapping, HR, all of the systems that exist within any corporation. It's going to take some time to streamline those into one entity. And we do expect that to take the 2-year transition period that the province is talking about. So what we do know at this time is that the ministry or the Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency, which I'll call OPCA from this point on it's easier, has posted the job for the project executive. So we do expect to see that position filled likely in July is my anticipation. What we know is that a transition committee will be formed. The project executive will head that transition committee. Each existing conservation authority is required to appoint 2 members to this transition committee within 90 days of royal assent. So within 90 days of April 29th. The legislation states that it should be the CAO of the organization and 1 elected official from the board. So, I mean, in the case of Grace Sauble, you're all elected officials. That's not true for every authority, though. We also know that as part of this transition, there's going to be a lot of materials that need to be reviewed and consolidated, and a transition plan needs to be developed. So OPCA has engaged Ernst & Young, which I'll call EY from here on in, to prepare preliminary transition plans for each new regional authority. And as such, we've been tasked with, between a couple weeks ago and June 12th rather, with providing a substantial amount of information over to Ernst & Young or EY so that they can undertake this review. I think it's important to note that we're not providing any sensitive information at this point. And in terms of organizational structures, for instance, we're providing operational structure and job descriptions, but not who fills those and things like that. And that's not necessary for them to have that. We do expect to receive that information back from Ernst & Young, I would suspect late summer. And then at that point, the transition committee will look at that and refine it into something that is appropriate for this region and as important for this region. So in an effort to get out on the best foot, we arranged a meeting with all of the other CAOs and either already appointed transition committee members or anticipated to be appointed transition committee members. So Vice Chair Shaw and I met on Friday with those members. It was a very productive meeting. It sounds like we're all on the same page, which is really positive. And we're going to be putting together some essentially ground rules around the merger, guiding principles that we hope to be able to follow. At a very high level, these are around governance and accountability, service and community outcomes, watershed management and operations, people and organizational transition and engagement and trust. So boiled down, what that means is that we want to make sure that for our communities and our partners, it's business as usual. The work keeps getting done to a very high standard, that our staff are informed and protected, and that the interests of our municipal partners as they exist today are carried forward through this transition. So I do hope to be able to bring these forward to the board in June for endorsement, but it's a very positive step. So we've had this first meeting. We hope to have another meeting in by the end of June prior to the appointment of the project executive, just to make sure that everybody within the existing organization sitting at the table, we're all aligned on the direction that we want to go. And it does seem that that's happening right now, because obviously once the project executive comes in, they will be in charge, and they may be able to steer the ship as they see fit. So it's really important that we already have a baseline understanding. So what we do need to do as a board, or what you need to do as a board, is to formally pass a resolution which appoints the transition committee members. As per the legislation, the CAO should be one of those members. And currently, Vice Chair Shaw has been acting as the other member. Ultimately, it is up to the board to make the decision on who that member from the board will be, though. So through you, Mr. Chair, we pass it back.
Okay, and I welcome any discussion to this report. I would think there may be some. Member Urick and then Member Dubik next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just curious, the transition committee, Tim. So obviously, yeah, it's all the different CAs, local, regional CAs. Who's the kind of oversight capacity on that? Like, presume it's just not us all in the room without supervision. I presume. So who is kind of leading the transition committee from an oversight perspective?
So the project executive that will be appointed by OPCA will be overseeing that process. And then ultimately that transition plan has to go to OPCA for approval. And any changes they would like to see would have to be incorporated into that plan. So OPCA ultimately, and the project executive that's appointed to this role, to this region.
Oh, wait, you have to turn yours out. Member Dubik, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So given the transition is going to take a few years, wondering if there's going to be any impacts on additional costs? Are there going to be any diversion, from the work that, that we need to do? And if there are additional costs, who would be covering them? Thank you.
Those are excellent questions, Member Dubik. Unfortunately, I don't have answers to those. So we do anticipate extra costs associated with this transition. And I presume that the Regional Conservation Authority would be responsible for funding those. Currently, that Regional Conservation Authority will be funded the same way that the existing conservation authorities are funded. So a combination of municipal levy and self-generated revenues.
Anything further, Nadia? Okay, Member Day.
For you to the CAO, I appreciate, or to Member Shaw, I appreciate the foresight with the ground rules or guiding principles that have been discussed with the future conservation authority that will be merged. Do you see there's a way of making those binding, or could they be overridden by something that OPCA produces later on or Ernst & Young recommends?
It's too early in the process for us to know for sure. We figure the best thing that we can do is come forward as a strong front of 12 individuals representing 6 existing conservation authorities with ideas that are reasonable and rational, and hope that we can push those forward, those agenda items forward.
Okay, go to Member Urick, then Member Maxwell next. Are you good? Oh, okay, let me go back to Member Day first.
It is unrelated, so it can definitely wait. But I just wondered through you to Member Shaw if she was interested in holding the position of the, I'm sorry, I can't remember the formal title right now, the appointee to the Lake Huron Regional Conservation Authority Transition Committee.
Yes, thank you, Member Day. I'm willing to do this. Chair Greg and I have discussed it, and so I've kind of made the time available to be able to do it if the board so wishes.
I just wanted to note that I think your agricultural background is beneficial to us because that's one of the concerns that we've flagged about working together with a larger geographic region.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I would just add from the conversation on Friday, we are certainly not alone in that concern within our conservation authority here. There was certainly some alignment in the concerns that we've shared here as a board amongst some of the others that we're going to be merging with. So I think that so yeah, they're as Tim mentioned, I think it was a very positive conversation on Friday, and a lot of alignment in concerns, but also optimism, I think, within the group that we can work together and find a good way forward together as well, recognizing the very vast geography and diversity within this region, possibly more so than any of the others that are going to be coming together. So yeah, I just thought I'd add that.
Okay, thank you, Member Urick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as I love asking Tim questions he can't answer, is there any conversation as to how the municipalities, since we're funding essentially this, is going to receive communications on progress of the transition committee's actions? Is it going to be literally a flow back through this body and then we're going to report back to our municipalities? Because there should be some consideration given then, because this has a direct financial impact on every municipality. And we should be kept in the loop on every aspect. It's going to come down. We're going to be doing our own budgeting later in the year, obviously. So I'm just wondering where that's falling on thought process about how communications about what's happening in the transition committee is going to get to the municipalities.
That specifically hasn't been discussed yet, and I guess we'll have to see how the work unfolds with the transition committee to see how much change there is between, you know, now being point A and February 1st being point B, or if the majority of the actual transformation takes place after that point. I do expect that most of the additional costs that we would expect would happen during or near the end of that transformation period. The one unknown cost right now at the beginning of the transition period is who specifically does the project executive work for and who funds that salary. But in terms of conveying the information to the municipalities, we can talk about that as the transition committee and see what makes the most sense in terms of providing a consistent collective message.
Member Maxwell?
Thank you, Chair Greg. I guess the question I have is, what skill sets would be best for our members to have in order to move the transition forward? I respect the idea of agriculture, but I'm wondering if you need somebody that understands governance and all the legal and finance and all into one basket. If there's any member like that in the room, but someone can help me out on that. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Member Maxwell. It's a great question. I think at this point, it's not expected that the transition committee members themselves will be experts in HR or finance or things like that. I think it's highly expected that within our existing staff bases, we would pull our team experts in where it's appropriate, and also that there may be additional experts, like external legal and HR experts that are brought in. My understanding is by OPCA, but we were yet to see what that looks like, to tackle some of these larger challenges.
Anything further, Alex? Okay. Looking to the left, Member Farmer.
Through the chair, following up on Member Urig's question about information flow, that twigged for me the recollection, and I'm just seeking for clarification on this, that after February the 1st, this board will cease to be comprised of representatives from our respective municipalities, but the budget for that year will continue to be funded by lower tier municipalities, leaving us with 10 months of direct cost with no representation and a to be determined information flow. And do I understand that timing correctly, and the appreciable gap in accountability and input?
I'm going to say yes and no. So I think the important thing to remember is when we come forward to approve a budget for 2027 that will be funded by apportionment to lower tier municipalities, the same as it is today, it's not going to be, here's a budget and a black hole void to go with it, right? We set a very detailed work plan for each year, and that work plan includes key performance indicators, metrics as to how we're going to do, what we're going to do, when we're going to do it. And the 2027 budget will be no different. It will contain that work plan. It'll include that work plan. It'll be built on that work plan. It'll include those metrics. So although this board won't be sitting here post February 1st, 2027, that work plan will be established for the year, and that's what that budget will be going to fund. So I think it's really important that we recognize that, and that although we are rolling up into a larger organization, it's still built on community organizations. That's what we do. We work for our local communities. We work for our municipalities. We work to make the places we live a better place. And just the way Sauble does that, the other partners that we're merging with also do the same in their respective parts of the world. So I think it's important that we recognize that too, that we don't expect this just to be an organization running amok, but an organization that follows a dedicated work plan the way we've always done.
Through the chair, I appreciate that answer. And I would just seek to clarify, my question is based not on my faith in this organization. My question is based in the uncertainty of the cost and function of the additional 2 layers of bureaucracy that the province is instituting. If not 3 layers, I guess we've got OPCA, and then the regional project manager, as well as the to be determined watershed councils. And I've clearly got concerns about that, as we've talked about at length. But I appreciate that confirmation that the intention from the organization as it stands is to keep doing the good work the organization has been doing with the same robust structures that have been established to date. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. And so to that layering of bureaucracy, yes, that is what the future layout looks like. What we're hoping at the, I'll call this the pre-transition committee, the discussions that we've had, there's a strong desire to have these watershed councils set up such that they represent the existing watersheds. So the existing Grey Sauble would have a watershed council, and the existing Maitland would have a watershed council, and so on and so forth, with the idea, with the understanding being that these committees don't have teeth, but they do provide a communication flow back and forth between the new board of directors. So we don't know that that can happen right now because we haven't seen the regulations associated with those watershed councils yet. But at the table that we're currently sitting at, that is the desire, and we hope to flesh out and build on that idea.
Go to member Day, then member Dubik next.
I think this will just be a quick clarifying question to member farmers. Good questions. Can you speak to November and December of 2026 and January of 2027 post-election but pre-Lake Huron Conservation Authority? That feels like there might be a gap in governance during that time period, or will municipalities need to work very quickly to get a temporary new board together for 3 months, 2-3 months?
That's something that we're still seeking better clarity on, but the answer that we've received from OPCA at this point is that the existing board members of the board today will continue to be the board members until February 1st, 2027. Municipal elections always cause a bit of upheaval within our board of directors, like they would for any of your committees, I'm sure, as there can be that gap period. So I think the biggest challenge will be members who are either not running for council or not re-elected for council otherwise, and what that looks like. So we will continue to push this question with OPCA. And if it just means that municipalities need to appoint somebody else in the interim, then so be it. That's not ideal because you wouldn't have been involved up to that point. The other thing is we have talked to some of your municipalities about keeping those appointments on should the person be reelected until February 1st for that continuity.
But yes, it's weird because in Owen Sound, we're salaried as counselors. So the moment you add someone who may not be part of council, someone has to pay that tab. So it's just got to be more expensive because there's not going to be a reduction in a salaried counselor system. Member Dubik.
Thank you, Chair. So Tim, we're always very, as a board, I think we're always very grateful of how you keep us updated with the news that is coming down. So I'm just wondering what's the cadence for the transition committee meetings so that we have a heads up and have an understanding of when we should be expecting news, as it flows down.
Thank you. As noted previously, we do hope to have another pre-transition committee meeting before the end of June, recognizing June is very busy. But following that, I don't know the answer to that yet because it will be dictated by, I presume, by the project executive.
Question, Tim, are you able to speak? Has there been conversation yet, as the report notes? The Conservation Authority currently must appoint a unelected official to that position. This could be 2 years in structure or duration. There's 5 months until the next election. So today we're appointing someone who's a municipal councillor. We would assume, and we all think that Vice Chair Shaw has been an excellent representative in Aaron Aldersley, but is there conversations about going forward, whether those individuals are still elected representatives?
Yes, thank you. So for clarity, the transition committee will only exist until February 1st, 2027.
Okay. Okay, I had that mixed up with the 2-year time frame too. A lot of moving parts. So we do have a motion to formalize an appointment before the board. Member Dubik, I see your hand in the air. That may just be accidental. Okay, but then I was wondering if you would formalize and move a motion to appoint Tim Lanthier and Vice Chair Shaw to the Lake Huron Region Conservation Authority Transition Committee. I see your hand in the air, so you would gladly move that. Would I have a seconder for that motion? Member Day is seconded. Any further discussion? And not seeing any. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. And thank you to Member Shaw for the work you've already done, attending some of those early meetings alongside Tim. Item, if I can get out of the shadow here. Item E is a minister's direction regarding temporary restrictions. So I believe back to Tim to present this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So earlier in the year, when the various times we've talked about these coming changes to the Conservation Authorities Act, we also talked about the fact that we expected a direction from the minister that would set guardrails around the period from the royal assent of the legislation to the point where the transition period itself, February 1st, is complete, to make sure that there are no major structural changes within any of the organizations as we try to make that transition to one corporate entity. And so we did receive that on May 1st, and the minister's direction takes effect May 1st and carries forward until February 1st, 2027, and it can be extended by the Lieutenant Governor and Council if the transition period is extended as well. These are very high-level guardrails. They don't generally impact the day-to-day operations of the organization. They relate to governance and our administrative bylaws, organizational structure and staffing, predominantly at the senior staffing level, land acquisition and disposition, large contracts and service agreements, either provided by us or to us, and capital spending and asset transactions at a very large level. So the categorizations that they've put in for services and contracts and capital spending are the lesser of $500,000 or 5% of either our tangible assets or our expenses or our budget. And that just depends on the category. There's different categories have different triggers, but anyway, large projects. So generally doesn't impact us that much. That being said, we have seen it impact us a little bit already. So because it affects any agreements that we might sign that extend beyond 2 years, and we typically sign our agreements for 5 years, there have been a couple of instances where we're in the process of getting agreements signed, where we've had to reach out to OPCA and say, are we okay to move forward with this? Because the minister's direction says you may not do this unless you ask and receive that permission. And so an example is we're going through the process of signing 5-year planning agreements with our municipal partners. OPCA has responded to us to say, yes, this is part of your core business. Please carry on, as an example. We do have an upcoming property acquisition and an upcoming property disposition that we're negotiating, and we have been negotiating for quite some time. Those are requiring us to provide OPCO with a bit more detail and a bit more information, and the requirement to wait for their approval for those to go forward. So we are navigating that right now. But outside of that, I don't expect any major impact to our business over the next 7 or 8 months associated with this. And through you, Mr. Chair, I'd welcome any questions.
Okay, thanks, Tim. And questions from board members? Member Farmer?
Through the chair, there were some elements on our work plan that looked at, for instance, a management plan around the West Rocks that would allow additional recreation activities there. My understanding is that something like that would constitute a multi-year agreement among the various stakeholders. Are those types of agreements also anticipated to be impacted by this direction beyond the larger property acquisition types of projects already mentioned?
Thank you. Sort of. So what would happen is we've committed to doing the management plan on that this year. So there's no direct impact associated with that, and it's already factored into our budget that we are doing and our work plan that we're doing that work. So that's not impacted. If we get to the point prior to the transition that we're ready to strike an agreement with, say, as an example, a climbing club, there's two ways to approach it. One is to say we want to do a 5-year agreement because we typically do 5-year agreements. It keeps things smoother for longer. And we could ask OPCA if they have any issue with that. Or we can just sign a 2-year agreement, and then we don't need anybody's permission other than generally the board if it's something brand new like that, but otherwise, no. So there are ways to carry on with our operations. It's just seeing into that further future where OPCA is trying to limit, and through the minister's direction, is trying to limit tying down the new organization for too long in something that may not be beneficial to it.
Okay, thanks for that question. Not seeing any further questions. There is a resolution in the report that the Great Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors receive this report as information. So moved by Member Farmer, and the seconder, Member Winters. I don't see any further hands in the air for discussion. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And now I'll welcome Mac. I thought I almost introduced him at the podium prematurely for the last report there. Welcome this afternoon, Mac, to speak to the client service standards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, not my topic, that one, but I've got a different topic, and that's talking about the client service standards for the environmental planning department. So this item is related to GSEA's strategic plan priority to achieve organizational excellence and the strategic direction to improve client, partner, stakeholder experience and satisfaction. So the client service standards been developed to provide customers of the environmental planning department with clear expectations on how staff are to provide service, specifically relating to timelines for communication and different types of permit applications. So as you all know, the environmental planning department is a very busy department that receives hundreds of inquiries, applications and proposals every year. They range in a diverse, they have a diverse range of complexity. And by setting a standard for both staff and customers, we can understand the expectations of what we're trying to achieve in providing them with service. So to go a bit further into the permit timelines as outlined in the report, but the board may recall that the legislation for Conservation Authority permits has 2 timelines related to the typical permitting process. That's staff advising of an applicant that their application is complete within 21 days of receiving the application and fee, and 90 days to make a decision on a complete application, or the applicant has appeal rights to the Ontario Lands Tribunal. So, we recognize that there are different levels of complexity within the permits, and we've set additional reduced timelines to recognize that. So, for example, we're striving to have routine permits issued within 14 days, Standard and minor permits, we're aiming for 30 days, and major projects are 90 days. And I should note that staff are often better than these timelines that we're saying, but I think this is the timelines that sets a good base for the ground rules that we're trying to work around and for clients to expect. The approved client services standard will be posted on GSEA's website and available to the public. Are there any questions?
Okay, and questions from board members? Member Dubik.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. So very useful to have these service agreements in place. Just wondering about these permit times. So these 90 days, 30 days, and 14 days. Is this standard across other conservation authorities, or are these timelines that we're setting for ourselves?
So Conservation Ontario does have a customer service guideline, and it's really reflected of 30 days for minor projects. And I don't have the number in front of me, but I think it's around 90 days for the major, but I'm not sure. But each CA does have the ability to set their own standards, and most do. We did look at other conservation authorities and what they've done for a client service standard as well in preparing this.
Okay, thanks. And just before I go to Member Farmer, I'll just note when we were at the Conservation Ontario meeting in April, I think it's 97% was the number currently that conservation authorities across the province are meeting that 90-day standard. It's pretty exceptional and pretty close to 100. Member Farmer.
Through the chair, I just want to express appreciation for staff that you included the what we need from our clients section. I think that having clear expectations like that also protect you folks, and that it's as much as folks come for service with certain expectations, that it's also really important that we make it clear what we expect of the people knocking on your door. So thanks for including that. I think that's, you wouldn't think that you would need to say things like that, but in the event that we do, it's good that it's there.
Thank you. I can say the vast majority of experiences we have are positive with clients. So it's very rare for, something like that to come up.
Member Urick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and because no topic is complete without amalgamation. At the transition, because this is all being done under the auspice of actually improving processes and development, et cetera, et cetera. At the transition committee, and I know you're not there yet, but is there a concern that these will be shortened? I mean, is the whole point is they're trying to speed up process, and I know they're trying to eliminate what they perceive as problem areas or over administration or difference between different CAs. But Doug's underlining message is we need to speed up. And I'm just wondering whether that is kind of being discussed at the table as a concern, because obviously work has to still happen. Mac has and his team still have to process things, and that takes time. It's just a concern that obviously they might come in and say, oh, look, let's move that to 14 days and 60. Is there any kind of transparency on that?
Thank you, Member Urick. So we're way too early in the process for that. So when I had talked about that 2-year period for the transformation, these are the types of things, amalgamating policy and service standards and guidelines, that will happen much later in that transformation period. But that being said, these are very respectable timelines that Mac and his team have put forward. And the only way that somebody could come in and say, we're going to cut these in half, is to say, we're also going to double your staff contingent so that you have the capacity in-house to do this.
Member Maxwell.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Mac. I just have a question. So when you're issuing a permit, do you have to meet compliance if a municipality has a master drainage plan?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So it would be a separate item. Certainly, we look at our regulation mapping that we have. If there's other information out there that indicates we might have concern, such as flooding that's been identified in a master drainage study, then we might look at that. But if it's not included within the regulation mapping or approved as regulation mapping, then it's kind of it's a bit of a gray area of how to handle that. So, yeah.
The reason I ask that, because as an area gets more urbanized, you inherit more flooding in other areas. So I just, every action you do impacts somebody. So, we're implementing the master drainage plan. I didn't know in the future, if you'll have to meet compliance with it as well. That's all. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for that question. Is there any other questions for Mac? I'm not seeing any, so there is included in the motion or in the report that the Great Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors endorses the proposed client service standard for the Environmental Planning Department. Do I have a mover of such motion? Member Farmer, and seconder, Member Maxwell. No further discussion. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And I'm going to this time thank the board for your speedy agenda yet today. I have a couple items still ahead of me this afternoon and had planned on passing the chair over to Vice Chair Shaw to carry out the last of the meeting. So I'll take this opportunity to vacate the meeting, noting that we still have quorum. And if you lose your connection, Member Dubik, do your best to contact Tim. No, you'll cover it.
There we go. Okay. Thank you, Chair Greg. Okay, so at this time then in the agenda, I'd like to turn it back over to Tim for the CAO's report.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So it's busy. That's a short answer. It's been a very busy spring. Staff are very busy. Everyone is. Some good news though to note coming out of that. The very first is that we're moving home. So we've been in a temporary office for 13 and a half months now, and we will be moving back to the administration center starting tomorrow. So our computer systems will start moving tomorrow. And then Saturday, the moving truck shows up and takes all of our stuff. And so the office will be closed to the public starting at the end of the day today and reopening to the public Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. These last 2 days of this week will be used for staff to pack, coordinate, and get any stuff that they don't want the movers to take over. Like I said, the movers come on Saturday. Monday will be utilized to reestablish ourselves within our respective offices, and then the doors will open on Tuesday. Super exciting. So proud of our staff team for all the work that they've done to make this happen and for their patience in living in a space that is a fraction of the size of our regular office. And I've been through the finished office a few times now, and it looks amazing. And Valerie has, on very short notice, coordinated a deep clean of the office that's occurring as we speak. So it should be ready for us to move all our stuff in, and that's very, very exciting. And we can't wait to have you there. And we will plan a larger event for you and your councils and our partners this summer once we're settled in. Thank you. Yeah, so thank you for all your support through this process. A couple of other things that I'd like to bring to your attention. We've launched a new volunteer opportunities webpage on our broader website. So we frequently would get calls from people saying, I'd like to volunteer. How do I do this? So we've launched a pretty simple webpage that focuses on the things that the opportunities that we already have. So Inglis Falls Arboretum Alliance, Friends of Haibu, Beaver River Watershed Initiative, our Turtle Stewardship Program, our Leader in Training program for day camp leaders. That's a volunteer opportunity. And then we've also put in an option for people to suggest ideas. If they're like, well, this is what I'd really like to do. And maybe if we hear from enough people saying they'd really like to do that, we'll create a new opportunity. So that is one of our strategic items, was to address that, and that's in place now. Upon returning to the office, we'll be updating our signatures, email signatures, obviously, to say what our address is. And as part of that, in very short order, we'll be including a customer service feedback loop as well. So building on Mac's customer and client service standards for planning, we also want to know, or we want feedback from the public, and we want that loop to be easy for people to feedback, to say, this is how I dealt with, this is how I engaged with the organization. This was my experience with the organization. And if there's anything that we need to act on to improve the way we deliver our customer service, this will give us the mechanism to at least know what that is if we don't already know it. So that's another big step forward, and one of our strategic initiatives as well. As mentioned briefly earlier, we're continuing to update our planning agreements with our municipalities. At this point, we've signed an agreement with Bruce County, which covers Aaron Eldersley and the town of South Bruce Peninsula. And we've also signed the agreement with the municipality of Meaford, and we expect the rest of them to be signed in very short order as well. So this breaks down essentially what the service expectation is and the collection of fees, which makes everybody's life a little bit easier. And as I mentioned, OPCA has approved us with moving forward with these as a 5-year agreement. Chair Greg and I attended Conservation Ontario's council meeting on April 27th. This was their AGM for the year. So I'd like to report back that the chair, Dave Barton, who is also the chair of TRCA, has been acclaimed as the chair of Conservation Ontario. The 2 vice chairs, Ed McGugan from Maitland and Pat Warren from Kawartha, were also acclaimed. And then there was an election for the directors, which are made up of CAOs from the collective. So Samantha Lawson from Grand River, Rob Baldwin from Lake Simcoe, and Brad McNevin from Quinty are on that council. So that you know who makes up the board. So that's the board of directors, and then the council is representatives from each of the respective authorities. The next CO meeting will be June 22nd. We have the foundation hosting the memorial tree ceremony on June 14th at 2 p.m. That's coming up. This will be the last memorial tree ceremony that they will be doing, and they're even though largely the foundation is dormant this year, awaiting the final dissolution, they are coming out of retirement, as it were, to host this one final tree ceremony to respect the trees that were sold last year. And one final thing, even though they're not technically in the room right now, I would like to offer a big thank you to the County of Grey and the staff here for allowing us to utilize these council chambers as our board room for the last 13 months. We really, really do appreciate it, and it's made our lives a lot easier, and certainly they are beautiful chambers for us to be able to use. So thank you to the county for that. But we'll be happy to be returning to our own brand new boardroom for the June meeting. And through you, Madam Vice Chair, that's all for me, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Tim. I'm sure staff are also very happy to have more parking back in the new, moving back to the new building. Is there any questions for Tim? Member Urick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2 things. On behalf of our resident press back there, Chris asked me last night, says, is there going to be a press table in the new building? So I'll let you answer that one. My second question is, you mentioned the Conservation Ontario in your report, and the one thing I didn't ask earlier, and I don't think was covered in the transition committee Are Conservation Ontario represented at that? Do they have a seat at that table?
So two-part question. I'll give a two-part answer. The first question to Mr. Fell, it depends on who the press is. No, I'm kidding. Yes, we will definitely, no. Yeah, we will definitely have space for both staff and the public and the press within that space. The second question about Conservation Ontario, no, they are not built into the transition committee process.
Any other questions for Tim from the board? Okay, seeing none, then we do have there is no report from the chair. Chair Greg had mentioned he had nothing to report. So we will move to our closed session. We do have a closed session today. The resolution is that the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority Board of Directors proceed into closed session at 2:27 p.m. to discuss matters related to the following: minutes of the closed session of the regular Board of Directors meeting held on March 25th, 2026, and minutes of the two minutes of the confidential closed session of the regular Board of Directors meeting held on March 25th, 2026, and 3 minutes of the closed session of the regular Board of Directors meeting held on April 22nd, 2026. And finally, item 4, an item closed as it relates to employee negotiations or labor relations, according to GSCA Administrative Bylaw Section 4 XVIIC. And further, that CAO Tim Lanthier, Finance and Human Resource Services Manager Allison Armstrong, and Administrative Assistant Valerie Coleman will be remain present. Do I have a mover for that resolution, Member Uhrig, and a seconder, Member Farmer? All in favor of